My name is Sofia Morales. I'm 52 years old, and what I'm about to tell you will change how you see family forever. 3 months ago, my brother Miguel looked me straight in the eye and said, "Sofia, you're getting older. Let me manage your money now. It's what's best for the family." I smiled and nodded like the trusting sister I had always been. But what Miguel didn't know was that I had been secretly recording every conversation, every transaction, every lie for weeks. And what I discovered about my own brother's betrayal was more devastating than I could have ever imagined. For 52 years, I believed family meant everything. I believed blood was thicker than water. I believed that the brother who held my hand when we crossed the street as children would never, ever hurt me. I was wrong about everything. My story begins 6 months ago in the small kitchen of my modest home in East Los Angeles, where the smell of fresh tortillas mixed with the sound of my sewing machine humming in the background. I had spent 30 years building my small tailoring business, working 16-hour days, saving every penny, sacrificing everything for my family. My hands, weathered from decades of needlework, had earned every dollar in my savings account through pure determination and love. Miguel had always been the golden child in our family, handsome, charming, with that smile that could convince anyone of anything. While I worked with my hands, he worked with his words, always talking about big business deals, investment opportunities, ways to make money grow. Our parents, God rest their souls, always said Miguel had the head for numbers and I had the heart for family. They were right about one thing: I did have the heart. But they were wrong about Miguel having the head for anything honest. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was preparing breakfast when Miguel arrived unannounced, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the folder of papers in his hands and the serious expression on his face. "Sofia, we need to talk," he said, sitting at my kitchen table like he owned the place. "I've been thinking about your future, about your money." I poured him coffee in his favorite mug, the one with "World's Best Brother" that I had given him for his birthday years ago. The irony of that mug would haunt me for months. "What about my money, Miguel?" I asked, genuinely curious. I had always been careful with my finances, never spending more than I earned, always putting aside money for emergencies. "You're 52 now, Sofia. You're not getting any younger. What happens if you get sick? What happens if you can't work? You need someone to help you manage your finances properly." His words stung, but not because they were cruel, because they seemed to come from a place of genuine concern. Miguel had always been protective of me, especially after our parents died. He was my only family, my only support system in this world. "I manage my money just fine, Miguel," I replied, but I could hear the uncertainty in my own voice. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was getting older and needed help. "Sofia, look at these numbers," he said, spreading papers across my table. "You have $85,000 in savings, but it's just sitting in a regular savings account earning almost nothing. I could invest this money for you, make it grow. In 5 years, you could have double that amount." $85,000. It was my life's work, every sacrifice I had made, every late night I had spent sewing, every vacation I had never taken, every luxury I had denied myself. It represented security, independence, the promise that I would never be a burden on anyone. "I don't know anything about investments, Miguel," I said honestly. "What if we lose the money?" "That's exactly why you need me," he replied, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I've been studying the market for years. I have connections, opportunities that regular people don't have access to. Trust me, Sofia. Have I ever steered you wrong?" The truth was, he hadn't. Miguel had always been there for me. When I started my tailoring business, he helped me get my first clients. When I needed a loan to buy my sewing machines, he co-signed for me. When our parents got sick, he handled all the medical paperwork while I provided the care. He was my brother, my protector, my friend. What would I need to do? I asked, and I saw his eyes light up with something I couldn't quite identify at the time. Now I know it was greed. Just sign some papers giving me power of attorney over your financial accounts. It's temporary, just until we get everything set up properly. You'll still have access to your money, but I'll be able to make investments on your behalf. Power of attorney. The words felt heavy in my mouth. Isn't that a big step, Miguel? It's a smart step, he said firmly. Sophia, you trust me, don't you? Of course I trusted him. He was my brother. So I signed the papers. The first month after signing the power of attorney, everything seemed normal. Miguel would call me every few days to update me on our investments. He spoke about stocks and bonds and market fluctuations with such confidence that I felt foolish for not understanding any of it. The tech sector is really performing well, he would say. I moved $15,000 into a promising startup. Don't worry, it's a sure thing. How do you know it's a sure thing? I would ask. Because I have inside information, Sophia. That's the advantage of having connections in the business world. I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded to see statements, to understand exactly where my money was going. But Miguel had a way of making me feel stupid whenever I asked for details, like I was questioning his expertise and his love for me. Sophia, you have to trust the process, he would say whenever I expressed concern. This is exactly why you needed me to handle this. You worry too much about things you don't understand. But I did understand one thing. My monthly bank statements had stopped coming. When I asked Miguel about this, he explained that since he was managing my accounts, the statements were being sent to his address to avoid confusion. I'll bring you copies of everything, he promised. But honestly, Sophia, looking at all those numbers will just stress you out. Let me handle the complicated stuff. That should have been my first red flag. But I was so used to trusting Miguel, so used to letting him handle the complicated stuff, that I accepted his explanation without question. The second red flag came 6 weeks later when I needed $3,000 to repair my sewing machines. The motor on my industrial machine had burned out, and without it, I couldn't work. Miguel, I need to withdraw some money for equipment repairs, I told him over the phone. There was a pause that lasted too long. How much do you need? $3,000. Another pause. Sophia, that's a lot of money. Are you sure you need to spend that much? Maybe you could find a cheaper repair shop. I was confused. $3,000 was a lot of money to me, but it was a tiny fraction of my savings. Why was Miguel acting like it was a problem? Miguel, it's my money. I need my machines to work. Of course it's your money, he said quickly. I'm just trying to help you make smart financial decisions. Every dollar you spend is a dollar that's not growing through investments. But if I can't work, I can't earn any money at all, I pointed out. You're right. I'll transfer the money to your checking account today. But the money didn't appear that day, or the next day. When I called Miguel, he said there had been a processing delay with the investment accounts. When I called the day after that, he said the money was tied up in a short-term investment that couldn't be liquidated immediately. How long? I asked, starting to feel panic creep into my voice. Maybe a week, 2 weeks at most. I couldn't wait 2 weeks. I had clients depending on me, orders that needed to be filled. I ended up borrowing money from my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, promising to pay her back as soon as Miguel sorted out the processing delay. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Miguel had always been honest with me. He had always had my best interests at heart. But why was it so difficult to access my own money? The third red flag was the biggest one, and it came in the form of a phone call from my bank. Ms. Morales, this is Jennifer from First National Bank. I'm calling because we've noticed some unusual activity on your savings account. My heart started racing. What kind of unusual activity? Large withdrawals over the past 2 months. We just want to confirm that you authorize these transactions." "How large?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. $25,000 on March 15th, $18,000 on March 28th, $22,000 on April 10th, and $15,000 on April 20th. That's $80,000 in total withdrawals. The room started spinning. $80,000, almost all of my life savings, gone. I didn't authorize those withdrawals," I whispered. "Ma'am, according to our records, these withdrawals were made by Miguel Morales, who has power of attorney over your account. Are you saying these were unauthorized?" Miguel, my brother, my protector, had stolen almost everything I had. "I need to see the records," I said, my voice stronger now. "I need to see everything." "Of course, Ms. Morales. Can you come in tomorrow morning?" That night was the longest night of my life. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the mug that said "World's Best Brother," trying to make sense of what I had learned. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Miguel had made legitimate investments and the bank was confused about the transactions. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. But deep in my heart, I knew it wasn't. The next morning, I sat across from Jennifer at the bank, looking at printed statements that told the story of my brother's betrayal in black and white. Every withdrawal was clearly documented. Every transaction showed Miguel's signature, authorized by the power of attorney I had so trustingly signed. "Ms. Morales, I have to ask, did you know about these withdrawals?" I shook my head, unable to speak. Because if these were unauthorized, this constitutes financial elder abuse, which is a serious crime. Elder abuse. The words hit me like a slap. I wasn't elderly, I was only 52, but I was vulnerable, and Miguel had taken advantage of that vulnerability. "What can I do?" I asked. "You can revoke the power of attorney immediately, which will prevent any future unauthorized transactions. And you can file a police report if you believe a crime has been committed." File a police report against my own brother. The thought made me sick to my stomach. "I need time to think," I said. "I understand. But Ms. Morales, I strongly recommend you revoke the power of attorney today. Right now, Miguel still has legal access to your remaining funds." She was right. I signed the papers to revoke Miguel's access to my accounts, and then I went home to confront the most difficult decision of my life. That afternoon, Miguel called me, cheerful as always. "Sofia, how are you, hermana? I have great news about our investments." Our investments. The casual way he said it made my blood boil. "Miguel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course. What is it?" "The bank called me yesterday. They said you've withdrawn $80,000 from my savings account over the past 2 months. Silence. Long, telling silence. "Miguel? Are you there?" "Yes, I'm here. Sofia, I can explain everything." "Then explain." "Those weren't withdrawals, they were investments. I moved your money into high-yield investment accounts. It's all still there. It's just in different accounts now." "Show me." "What?" "Show me the investment accounts. Show me the statements. Show me where my money is." Another pause. "Sofia, you're getting upset over nothing. Your money is safe. It's growing. In fact, you've already earned $3,000 in returns." "If that's true, then showing me the statements should be easy." "I don't have them with me right now, but I can bring them by tomorrow." "Miguel, I revoked your power of attorney today." The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of someone who had been caught. "Why would you do that?" he asked, and for the first time I heard anger in his voice instead of concern. "Because I want to see my money. I want to understand where it is and what's happening to it." "Sofia, you're making a mistake. You don't understand how investments work. If you panic and pull the money out now, you'll lose everything. Then help me understand. Come over right now with all the statements and show me exactly where my money is. I can't come right now. I'm in the middle of important business meetings. Then tomorrow morning, first thing. Fine, tomorrow morning. But Sophia, you're going to feel very foolish when you see how much money I've made for you. He hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find out the truth about what Miguel had done with my money, and I was going to document everything. If my brother had stolen from me, I needed proof. And if he was innocent, I needed to know that too. I went to the electronics store and bought a small digital recorder, the kind that could fit in my purse and record hours of conversation. I also bought a notebook where I would document every interaction, every phone call, every promise Miguel made. The next morning, Miguel arrived at my house with a folder of papers and his usual confident smile. But I could see something different in his eyes, a nervousness that hadn't been there before. Sophia, I brought everything you wanted to see, he said, settling into his usual chair at my kitchen table. But first, I need you to understand something. The investment world is complicated. These statements might look confusing to you, but I can explain everything. I turned on the recorder in my purse and opened my notebook. Show me, I said simply. Miguel opened the folder and spread out several papers. At first glance, they looked official. Letterheads from investment companies, account numbers, balance statements. But as I looked closer, something felt wrong. This statement shows you have $47,000 in a tech stock portfolio, Miguel explained, pointing to one of the papers. And this one shows $38,000 in a bond fund. I did the math quickly. $47,000 plus $38,000 was $85,000, exactly what I had started with. No growth, despite Miguel's promises of doubling my money. Where's the $3,000 in returns you mentioned yesterday? I asked. That's being reinvested automatically. It doesn't show up on these statements because it's in a separate growth account. I picked up one of the statements and examined it more closely. The letterhead said Premier Investment Solutions, but something about the formatting looked off. The fonts didn't match, and there were small spelling errors in the fine print. Miguel, can I call this investment company to verify my account? Why would you want to do that? Because I want to understand my investments better. You said I should learn about this stuff. Sophia, you can't just call them. These are exclusive investment firms. They don't take calls from individual investors. Everything has to go through me as your authorized representative. But I had already revoked his authorization. If these accounts were real, I should be able to access them directly. Give me the phone number for Premier Investment Solutions, I said. Miguel shuffled through the papers nervously. I don't have it with me. It's in my office. Then let's call information and get it. Sophia, why are you being so difficult? I'm trying to help you. I'm not being difficult. I'm being careful with my money. That's when Miguel's mask finally slipped. Your money? He said, his voice rising. Sophia, you gave me power of attorney because you knew you couldn't handle this yourself. You asked me to take care of your finances because you don't understand anything about money management, and now you're questioning every decision I make? I'm questioning these statements because they don't look real, Miguel. Don't look real? Are you calling me a liar? I'm asking you to prove that my money is where you say it is. Miguel stood up abruptly, gathering the papers. I don't have to prove anything to you. You either trust me or you don't. Right now, I don't. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Hatred. Pure, cold hatred. Fine, he said. Handle your own money, but don't come crying to me when you lose everything because you don't know what you're doing." He stormed out of my house, taking the fake statements with him. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after he left, listening to the recording I had just made. Miguel's anger, his refusal to provide proof, his attempt to make me feel stupid for asking questions. It all confirmed what I already knew in my heart. My brother had stolen my life savings, but I needed more than just my suspicions. I needed evidence that would hold up in court. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I called every investment company whose name Miguel had mentioned, asking about accounts in my name. None of them had any record of me as a client. I researched Premier Investment Solutions online and found that it didn't exist. The website Miguel had shown me was a fake he had created. I also started following Miguel, something that made me feel sick but that I knew was necessary. I discovered that he had been living far beyond his means. Expensive dinners, new clothes, a lease on a luxury car he couldn't afford. My money was funding his lifestyle while he told me it was growing through investments. The most damning evidence came when I hired a private investigator to look into Miguel's finances. What we found was devastating. Miguel owed $45,000 in credit card debt. He owed $18,000 in back taxes. He had been borrowing money from loan sharks to pay for his gambling addiction, an addiction I never knew he had. My $80,000 hadn't been invested. It had been used to pay off his debts and fund his destructive habits. But I still needed him to confess, on record, to what he had done. I called Miguel and asked him to meet me for lunch, telling him I wanted to apologize for not trusting him. He agreed, probably thinking he could manipulate me back into giving him access to my remaining funds. We met at our favorite restaurant, the place where we had celebrated every birthday and holiday for the past 10 years. I had my recorder running and my notebook ready. "Miguel, I've been thinking about what you said," I began. "Maybe I was too hasty in revoking the power of attorney." His eyes lit up with hope and greed. "Sophia, I'm so glad you're being reasonable. I know this has been stressful for you, but you have to trust the process." "I want to trust you, Miguel. But I need to understand something first. When you withdrew that money from my account, where exactly did it go?" "I told you it went into investment accounts." "But which accounts specifically?" "I need names, account numbers, something I can verify." Miguel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Sophia, why are you still obsessing over these details?" "Because it's my money, and I have a right to know where it is." "Your money is safe. That's all you need to know." "No, Miguel. That's not all I need to know. I need to know exactly where my $80,000 is right now." It's spread across multiple accounts for diversification." "Name one." "What?" "Name one account where my money is invested." Miguel looked around the restaurant nervously. "Sophia, I don't have that information memorized." "Then call your office and get it." "I can't do that right now." "Why not?" Because the markets are closed." "Miguel, it's Tuesday afternoon. The markets are open." That's when he finally broke. "Okay, fine," he said, his voice loud enough that other diners turned to look at us. "You want to know where your money is?" "It's gone, Sophia. It's gone because I had debts that needed to be paid, and you had money just sitting there doing nothing." My heart stopped. Even though I had suspected this, hearing him admit it was like being punched in the stomach. "You stole my money," I whispered. "I didn't steal anything. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back." "How? How were you going to pay back $80,000? "I was working on some deals, some opportunities." "You were gambling, Miguel. You used my life savings to pay off your gambling debts." His face went white. "How do you know about that?" Because I hired a private investigator. Because I found out about the loan sharks, the credit cards, the taxes you owe. You didn't invest my money, Miguel. You stole it to pay for your addiction. Miguel looked around the restaurant again, realizing that people were staring at us. He leaned across the table and lowered his voice. Sophia, you don't understand. I was in trouble, real trouble. These people I owed money to, they were threatening me. I had no choice. You had a choice. You could have asked me for help. You could have been honest with me. You never would have given me $80,000. You're right. I wouldn't have, because it was my entire life savings. I was going to pay it back, he repeated desperately. I just needed time. With what money, Miguel? You don't have a job. You don't have any income. You were never going to pay me back. Miguel slumped in his chair, finally defeated. What do you want me to say, Sophia? That I'm sorry? That I made a mistake? Fine. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake, Miguel. This was theft. This was betrayal. This was you deciding that your problems were more important than my security. You're my sister. Family helps family. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't lie to family. Family doesn't destroy each other's lives for money. I stood up to leave, but Miguel grabbed my arm. Sophia, please, don't do anything stupid. We can work this out between us. We don't need to involve anyone else. Let go of me, Miguel. Promise me you won't go to the police. I can't promise you that. Sophia, I'm your brother. Your only family. If you send me to jail, you'll have no one. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized that I already had no one. The brother I had loved and trusted was gone, replaced by this desperate, lying stranger who had stolen my future. I already have no one, I said, pulling my arm free. You made sure of that when you decided my money was worth more to you than my trust. I left Miguel sitting in that restaurant and drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I got to my house, I sat in my car for a long time, listening to the recording of our conversation. Miguel's confession was clear and undeniable. He had admitted to taking my money, admitted to lying about the investments, admitted that he had never intended to pay me back. That evening, I called the police. Detective Rodriguez arrived at my house an hour later. She was a woman about my age, with kind eyes and a professional manner that immediately put me at ease. Ms. Morales, I understand you want to report a case of financial elder abuse. I'm not elderly, I said automatically. In California, financial elder abuse applies to anyone over 50 who has been financially exploited by someone in a position of trust. Your brother definitely qualifies as someone in a position of trust. I showed Detective Rodriguez all of my evidence, the bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals, the fake investment documents Miguel had created, the recording of his confession at the restaurant. She listened to everything carefully, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. Ms. Morales, this is a very strong case. Your brother has committed multiple felonies, theft, fraud, elder abuse. With the evidence you've gathered, we can definitely pursue criminal charges. What happens next? We'll issue a warrant for his arrest. He'll be charged and arraigned, and then the case will go to trial. You should also consider filing a civil lawsuit to try to recover your money. Is there any chance I'll get my money back? Detective Rodriguez's expression was sympathetic but realistic. I have to be honest with you. If your brother has already spent the money, recovery can be very difficult. But we'll do everything we can to help you. 2 days later, Miguel was arrested at his apartment. The local news picked up the story. Brother steals $80,000 from sister's life savings. And suddenly, everyone in our neighborhood knew what had happened. The shame was almost unbearable. People I had known for years looked at me with pity, whispering about how foolish I had been to trust my brother with so much money. Some people blamed me for not being more careful, for not asking more questions, for being naive enough to sign over power of attorney. But there were also people who supported me. Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor who had lent me money for my sewing machine repairs, brought me dinner every night for a week. My clients at the tailoring shop rallied around me, giving me extra work and referring new customers to help me rebuild my savings. "You did the right thing," Mrs. Rodriguez told me one evening as we sat on my front porch. "Family or not, what he did was wrong." "I keep thinking maybe I should have handled it differently," I admitted. "Maybe I should have given him a chance to pay me back." "With what money? You said yourself he has no income and no assets. He would have just kept lying to you while spending whatever money you had left." She was right, but it didn't make the guilt any easier to bear. The trial took place 6 months later. Miguel had hired a lawyer who tried to argue that this was a family dispute, not a criminal matter. He claimed that Miguel had genuinely intended to invest my money and pay me back, that his gambling addiction was a disease that deserved treatment, not punishment. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor played the recording of Miguel's confession in the restaurant. She showed the jury the fake investment documents he had created. She presented testimony from the private investigator about Miguel's debts and gambling habits. Miguel took the stand in his own defense, and I had to sit there and listen to him lie under oath. He claimed that I had known about his gambling problems and had willingly given him the money to help him. He said that I was confused about the investment arrangements because of my age and limited education. It was painful to hear my own brother portray me as a foolish old woman who didn't understand her own financial decisions. But it was even more painful to see that he felt no genuine remorse for what he had done to me. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before finding Miguel guilty on all charges: grand theft, elder abuse, and fraud. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay me restitution, though the judge acknowledged that recovery of the stolen funds was unlikely. As Miguel was led away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. I thought I might see some sign of the brother I had once loved, some flicker of regret or apology. Instead, I saw only resentment, as if I had wronged him by refusing to let him get away with stealing my life savings. That was the moment I finally accepted that the Miguel I had loved was gone, if he had ever really existed at all. It's been 2 years since Miguel's conviction, and I'm still rebuilding my life. I never recovered the $80,000 he stole. He had spent it all on debts and gambling, just as I suspected. But I've managed to save about $15,000 through careful budgeting and extra work, and I'm slowly building my security back up. The hardest part hasn't been the financial loss, though that's been devastating. The hardest part has been learning to trust again, not just other people, but my own judgment. For months after the trial, I second-guessed every decision I made, wondering if I was being naive or foolish. But I've also learned some important lessons. I learned that love and trust are not the same thing. I learned that family relationships don't exempt people from accountability for their actions. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior, even when that someone is your brother. I still get letters from Miguel in prison sometimes. They're always the same: apologies mixed with justifications, promises to pay me back mixed with complaints about how unfair his sentence is. I don't respond to them anymore. There's nothing left to say. People sometimes ask me if I regret turning Miguel in to the police. They ask if I wish I had handled it differently, kept it in the family, given him another chance. My answer is always the same. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing it. Miguel made his choices. He chose to steal from me rather than ask for help. He chose to lie to me rather than be honest about his problems. He chose to betray my trust rather than respect the love I had always shown him. Those were his choices, and he has to live with the consequences. I made my choice too. I chose to seek justice rather than enable his behavior. I chose to protect myself rather than sacrifice my future for his mistakes. I chose truth over family loyalty, and I would make the same choice again. The recording device I bought to document Miguel's theft is still in my purse. I hope I never need to use it again, but I'm no longer naive enough to believe that family members can't hurt you. I've learned to verify, to ask questions, to trust but verify. My tailoring business is thriving again. I've hired 2 part-time seamstresses to help with the workload, and I'm even considering expanding into alterations for wedding dresses. The work keeps me busy and gives me purpose, and every dollar I earn feels precious because I know exactly where it's going. I've also become an advocate for other victims of financial elder abuse. I speak at community centers and senior centers, sharing my story and teaching people how to protect themselves from financial exploitation. It's painful to relive the experience over and over, but if my story can help even one person avoid what I went through, it's worth it. The most important thing I want people to understand is that financial abuse can happen to anyone, at any age, by anyone. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how careful you think you're being. When someone you love and trust betrays that trust, it can be devastating. But it's also important to know that you have options. You don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to protect someone who has hurt you just because they're family. You have the right to seek justice, to protect yourself, to demand accountability. If you're in a situation like mine, document everything. Keep records of all financial transactions. Ask questions and demand answers. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And remember that seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. My brother Miguel will be eligible for parole in 3 years. I don't know what I'll do if he tries to contact me when he gets out. Part of me hopes he's learned from his mistakes and found a way to become the man I once thought he was. But I'm not holding my breath. What I do know is that I'm stronger now than I was before this happened. I'm more careful, more aware, more protective of myself and my resources. I've learned that I can survive betrayal, that I can rebuild after devastation, that I can find justice even when it comes at a terrible personal cost. I'm 54 years old now, and I'm still working, still saving, still building my future. I may never have the $80,000 that Miguel stole from me, but I have something more valuable. I have my dignity, my integrity, and the knowledge that I stood up for myself when it mattered most. To anyone watching this who has been betrayed by someone they trusted, I want you to know that you're not alone. Your pain is valid, your anger is justified, and your decision to seek justice is brave. Don't let anyone tell you that you should have handled it differently or that family loyalty should come before your own protection. You deserve better than betrayal. You deserve honesty, respect, and love. That doesn't come with conditions or hidden costs. And you deserve to feel safe and secure in your own life, regardless of what anyone else thinks you should do. My name is Sofia Morales, and this is my story of betrayal, justice, and survival. I hope it helps someone else find the courage to protect themselves when the people they trust most decide to hurt them instead. Thank you for listening, and remember, trust, but always verify.